Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day. Today, we're going to be talking about a very hot optic online. This is the Primary Arms ACSS Gen 2 Cyclops Prism. This is a 1x prism in a very, very small form factor. But before we get into that, I do need to thank Gun Deals for having me on the channel. Of course, if you don't know, Gun Deals is a website that provides you with links to basically the best priced stuff on the internet. Whatever it is that you're looking for within the industry, it probably is on Gun Deals website for the best possible price. A nice thing about it is they don't make their money from you guys. They don't take your money. They don't buy or sell anything. They merely point you in the right direction. And then if it's an affiliate link or through a marketing partner or something else like that, they get a little bit of cut from the manufacturer, not from you guys. So with all that out of the way, of course, like, share, and subscribe because it is free and it does help us out quite a bit. Also, go ahead and comment literally anything about this guy down below. Now, a little bit of backface. I got this optic at a dealer price because I am actually a dealer for Primary Arms Optics, so I did not pay full price. And I don't think I'm actually allowed to tell you what I paid for it. However, it should be said that they are charging a very fair price for it, and their markups are not obscene. Now, this is the Gen 2 version. The Gen 1 was not around for very long. They came out with a very quick improvement to the Gen 1, and that was because the Gen 1 reticle, from what I've heard, was much too small and too difficult to pick up on 1x, because this is, of course, a 1x optic, so you probably want that reticle to be a little bigger, a little faster up close, that sort of thing, since again, it is a 1x optic. Now, the Gen 2 fixes that issue. That is the only version that I have tested, and it does a very, very good job. So these start out at about $250-ish on Primary Arms website. These are made overseas. One of the nice things about them, though, is that they come with a ton of different mounting option heights. Within the box, I think you have, like, in total, if you total up all the different possibilities of their mounting solutions, I think it's like 20 different heights. Basically, you could straight mount it, or you have a little cantilever section, or you have a large cantilever section, and you can kind of mix and match to your heart's desire. And they have a chart within the box that shows you all the different mounting heights options. And that's a cool thing. It's nice to be able to take a new optic and put it on literally any gun that you have, whether that's an AK and you need a super low mount, or some other weird Gucci gun out there that you like to have an optic at a specific height and you need a specific height mount for it. This has a ton of different mounting options that they include for you in the box. Now, size and weight on this guy is obviously very, very good. It's about, actually, I shouldn't say that. I believe it is the smallest 1x prism on the market. And again, prisms are really good for a couple things. They're very compact, so that compactness allows them to be very durable. And from basically every review that I've seen and heard on these guys, they have been incredibly tough for such a small, compact chunk of aluminum and glass. So in terms of its size, I don't think you could possibly ask for it to be any smaller. It is very small, does not take up very much space. So in terms of size and weight, they do a very, very good job. I believe weight is going to vary, of course, depending on what pieces of aluminum you use to adjust the height. Currently, I have it at a 1.63 inch height, which is a very comfortable height, though I could, of course, use the longer cantilever section and get that closer up to like a 1.9 or something else like that. But for this specific optic, I really didn't feel the need to do it, and 1.63 is a very comfortable height, though again, because they do have all the different mounting options in the box, you can kind of mix and match and figure out what works best for you, your specific gun, and your specific circumstances. So, if we're going to talk about the base mount, I believe these are compatible as well with ACOG mounts, which is cool. So there's other mounting varieties online that you can buy, as opposed to just what comes in the box, though again, what comes in the box is quite good. The mount itself, it uses two set screw designs, which I think I torqued down to like 35 to 40 inch-pounds, which is a good starting point. You could definitely probably torque down a little bit more. These are fairly large, substantial cross bolts. And then on the bottom of the mount itself, it also has kind of like half recoil lugs. It basically just mates up to the front and back of one of the Picatinny sections on your rail. Overall, it works quite well. After this point, I've tested it on 4 or 5 different guns, this Geisley quite a bit, both in just normal shooting and in competition, and on my Mark V, and probably a couple of other guns as well that I'm forgetting right now. I've tested it for well over 1,000 rounds, probably about 1,200 rounds at this point, and I've had no shift in zero through just normal everyday recoil, though again, modern optics and even in budget optics like this, you're really not seeing that be an issue. Now, this is a very feature-packed optic, so we're going to go ahead and get into the reticle. Now, this is the Gen 2 Cyclops reticle. This is not the 9mm version. They also do have a 9mm version reticle, I believe, on the website. This is not that version, though again, it's not on a 9mm, so it really doesn't need that reticle. Now, what we're working with for your main aiming point is a very nice fine chevron. Chevrons, personally, I like. They're a little bit bigger than a dot because they just take up a little bit more area than just like a really tiny fine dot, but also they have a very nice fine tip. So if you're doing very nice precision shooting or trying to be a little bit slower and a little bit more precise, you can use the vertice of the chevron to put that round exactly where you want it, which is a feature that I have used. I used this in a competition that was more focused on putting rounds exactly where you want them. So you're shooting at very small targets, like say a 2 or 3 inch box at like 20 to 30 yards in some circumstances. So you want to be very careful about your height over bore and putting that round exactly where you want it to be. So if you're using a dot that's blooming out a little bit too much, might be a little bit more difficult. But the chevron for me is a very, very precise aiming point. Now on a 1X, is it really all that necessary? I don't personally think so, but I think it's kind of the best of both worlds because you can just use the chevron quickly to, put that on your target, pull the trigger, that sort of thing. And if you really want to refine it, find that vertice and put that vertice exactly where you want it to on the target. Now on top of that, for also quick reference, you also have a horseshoe, a mostly like a 2/3 horseshoe around the chevron, which also features as a auto ranging feature, though we'll talk about that in just a minute. So you have a very nice illuminated horseshoe around your center chevron aiming point. That can be very useful when we're very close, say inside of 15 yards. You just put that chevron on a target, pull the trigger, you're going to be hitting that target. Now on top of that, as we already mentioned, I believe at 100 yards, a human shoulders, the average male shoulders, perfectly brackets in between in that chevron, and then if it's half, it's at 200, if it's at quarter, it's at 400, and so on. So you can use that center chevron, that center horseshoe area as an auto ranging feature as well in the bottom of the glass, not illuminated, so it's not bugging you and muddying up your image. You also have brackets for the average human height out to, I believe, 500 yards. So you have a base bracket and then you just put their head in that category and it will tell you, based upon the average human, what height they're actually at. So in terms of features, I think that the reticle is basically perfect for a 1X option. It has a very fine aiming point if you need it. It has a good sized chevron that is easy to pick up very quick, as well added by the illuminated outer horseshoe as well, which means that picking it up close, the reticle itself is very, very fast, very intuitive, and again, a little bit more precise than a red dot. So if I was going out to say 400 yards, and with this, you could probably use like the bottom edges of the chevron, depending on your caliber, at like 300 yards, then you would have a tiny hold at 400 yards. I believe they have a listing for that on their website about what the actual holds are if you did want to take this out to longer ranges, say with a magnifier or something else like that, or with just the 1X, because those shots are definitely doable, especially with 5.56 out of a long gun where there's not that much drop to begin with. So overall, on the reticle, I think that they did a very, very good job. Now, another thing that they did completely right is they put a very powerful illuminator in here that is legitimately daylight bright. Now, it is not fire hot bright like a red dot, but it is more than bright enough for what I consider to be daylight bright. It is vibrant, it's nice, it's punchy. Again, it's not necessarily like blooming out, overly bright like a red dot, but it is still very, very vibrant, very easy to pick up even in broad daylight. And on top of that, it has an auto on, auto off functionality. It is very good. I have never noticed it. So like right now, just playing around with it, it's already on its current setting, which I think I have it on like setting 6 or 7 for more like indoor applications. And then of course, if you're outside, you can go all the way up to 13. Now it does have night vision settings on it. The night vision settings on it are probably a little bit optimistic unless you're using like a clip-on device, which I'm not sure why you would be using a clip-on device with a 1x optic. Just because the glass quality, this is made overseas, this is made in China, I believe, and the glass quality is good, though not exceptional. And now something I would say also about that illumination that does get incredibly bright. If you have it on, say, setting 12 or 13 indoors, you're going to get a little bit of that green haze over the entire image because that illuminator is very, very powerful, and it tends to start to reflect off of the glass itself, not just the etched reticle portions. Now, not really an issue. You just, again, tune your brightness to your environment. When I'm outside, I have it up a little bit higher, somewhere between 10 and 13, depending on where I'm at. And when I'm indoors, I have it anywhere between like 6 and 8, and it works just fine. Now, so you have auto on, auto off, and depending on your settings, I believe that like a medium setting, you have 20,000 hours of battery life. Now, again, because you have auto on, auto off, and I've said this in many other videos, that basically means your battery life is not like battery life in total hours, but that's actually your use time. So you can use this optic, let's say you have it maxed out and your effective battery life is only like 5,000 hours at max brightness. That's 5,000 hours of use time, not 5,000 hours of total time. So that would be very, very difficult to reach on a single battery life. Most people are replacing their batteries every year, every other year, again, depending on the optic. This does use a 2032 in somewhat of a large exterior battery tray, though again, the overall package is still very, very small, though the battery tray does stick out quite a bit from the rest of the optic body. If that bugs you, hasn't really bugged me whatsoever, but it is just worth mentioning. So, now we get to talk about something that I'm a little bit less favorable on than some of the other reviewers have been. So a lot of people say that this is like, you know, the perfect close range optic or the optimal close range optic, and I don't really think that's the case. Now, if you have an astigmatism, that means that red dots don't really work for you, then this is probably actually the best possible close range optic for you in terms of its size and weight. One thing that I am going to complain about the optic is that a lot of people say it has a true 1x, that sort of thing, and that's not really the case. Now, anytime you have a bunch of pieces of curved glass in front of your eye, you're not actually seeing a true representation of what's there, versus if it's like two very thin panes on a red dot, you're gonna get a much, much more true image of what's actually there. With these, you get a decent 1x, though it is nothing special, I would say. There's actually quite a few LPVOs, budget LPVOs even, that have a better 1x performance, bigger field of view, more flat image than this does. Also very important to note is that while this does have a very exceptional eye relief and eye box, you know, very similar to a red dot, as long as you get your eye just somewhat behind it, you're still seeing that reticle, which is very, very good. It has a very forgiving eye box and really forgiving eye relief. Because this is a bunch of panes of curved glass, the image that you see actually changes depending on how close or how far you are away from the optic. So the closer it gets to your eye, the more magnification that you see. So if I had this mounted all the way back like I would an ACOG, the actual magnification would be like 1.1, 1.2, somewhere in that range. And when I've had it all the way forward on the rail, the magnification is something like 0.8, 0.9, something like that. So you need to find the optimal position for the Prism optic, for your eye, for your stock length, for your gun, all that sort of fun stuff, so that it is the most true 1x possible. Because again, the placement of this prism matters quite a bit. Yes, you might have 10 inches of eye relief, but at all those different distances, the actual image that you're seeing through the optic is a little bit different. Now, for me personally, and this is mostly just a personal thing, so I am going to bring this up. So if this isn't your problem, perfectly fine. This optic is a little bit slower for me up close than like a red dot. You know, there's a little bit of brain processing that has to go on when you're seeing one image out of your left eye and then a different image out of your right eye in my case. Now I have exceptional vision. I have 20/10 vision in my right eye, which is very, very good, and my left eye is 20/25, so it's actually a little bit worse because my right eye is basically doing all of the work for me. And because of that, when, say, I'm transitioning from target to target, if I can see them in my peripheral vision, and then when I pull up on target, the image in the glass is different than what I'm seeing in my peripheral vision, because you do get a little bit of that warping effect at 1x, a little bit of fisheye. So it's not a perfect 1x. It's good and definitely usable, but I do just want to say that it is a little bit slower and worse than other 1x's on the market, including like LPVOs and stuff like that. Now, again, if you have an astigmatism, and that basically eliminates all the red dots for you, this again probably is the best 1x optic for you, especially when you factor in size and weight. Sure, there might be a huge LPVO that has a flatter image and a little bit crisper glass and a better field of view, that sort of thing, but it's going to be, you know, double, triple, quadruple the size and weight. So, while I just want to make sure that people are aware that there are some very minor drawbacks to a very small prism optic like this, I still like it quite a bit, and I think it is very, very good, though I think some people online have maybe oversold it just a little bit. Now again, in terms of its longevity, I have accidentally dropped this a couple times, have not had any issues with it whatsoever. Something else that I do want to bring up really fast is that it does have a rear diopter so that you can adjust the reticle to your eye. Now, something that I've seen a couple of people say is that you adjust the reticle, or sorry, you adjust the diopter to give you the most true 1x. It's not really what it's there for. It's again to make sure that that reticle is in focus to your specific eyes. So my eyes again are very good, so I don't really have to mess with it all that much. Some people might need it backed out further. Now, a tangential effect of adjusting the diopter is that it does appear to change the 1x magnification for you. Now again, the diopter design is to focus the reticle to your eyes, not to fix your image within the glass. So what I recommend doing is not shoving it somewhere on the reticle or somewhere on your rail and then adjusting that diopter until the image looks good. Find a place where the image looks the best and the diopter is set the best for your eye. So this does take a little bit more setup and a little bit of trial and error to really figure out what works best for you, other than like a red dot where you're basically just slamming it on the front end of your upper receiver and calling it a day. So there are a few little quirks here and there with the optic. Again, overall though, I don't think there is a better 1x prism style optic on the market, especially when you factor in that it costs like 250 bucks, so it's not overly expensive. It's very compact, it's very lightweight. It has an excellent reticle. It has auto on and off and a true daylight bright reticle. Personally, I'm a big fan of daylight bright reticles. If I could get everything very similar to how I use a red dot, I am a very happy person. That's why the Viper PST Gen 2, the 1:6 model that has just that fiber optic fire illumination in the center, is one of my favorite, well actually is my favorite LPVO to use, because it basically performs like a red dot up close. And this is very, very good. Though again, I don't think it is quite up to the ease of use as a red dot. If you, for whatever reason, don't like red dots, don't trust electronics, you want a etched reticle that's going to last forever even if the battery goes out on you, then in that case this is probably, again, or you have an astigmatism, this probably is one of the best, if not the best, 1x MicroPrism style optics on the market. Now this has been a very popular optic for Primary Arms, and I am sure that they are going to continue to improve and fine-tune and maybe even come out with a couple different versions of it. And I'm sure you're also going to be seeing a lot of other companies being like, hey, we need to be making some micro 1x style prisms. And so I think you are going to be seeing a lot more competition in this space. And overall, it is a very, very good optic design, again, with a couple minor drawbacks. And I just want to make sure people know that. Now, another drawback in terms of the way a prism works is if you have backup iron sights, they don't co-witness through your prism optic. It's just not how they work, because there is, again, sub-magnification going on no matter what you do. It's not an actual true 1x. So if you do want to run a backup optic, in some of the footage, you'll probably see me running an offset red dot, because you either have to be running offset irons or offset red dot to have a true backup if your primary arms 1X Prism, for whatever reason, happens to go down. Whether that's you trip and fall and it breaks, it gets shot, or something else goes wrong with it, and you want an immediate backup, you're going to have something offset, once again, whether that's iron sights or a red dot. So I kind of joked about how peak 1X performance is a 1X MicroPrism and a offset red dot, so you have two 1X options, two of the best 1X options on the market attached to your gun at any one time. So with all that being said though, guys, I am a fan of the optic. I think it is very cool that Primary Arms was able to bring something to the market like this at this form factor and price, and that's why, you know, it's going to be selling like hotcakes for quite some time, and we're definitely going to be seeing more optics like this in the future, and, you know, probably from some really big name companies as well, you know, bringing more high tier, high end features. Although again, for the money, this is a feature packed optic. So overall, a couple downsides. Overall, very, very good. For a small percentage of the population that can't use red dots, this is probably your best option. And with all of that out of the way, guys, I do want to say thank you once again for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace off.